Ankles don't look too bad. The feet are staying pretty stationary.
Just hurt this some pop. Keep cracking.
Cracking. Cracks and pops are perfectly fine as long as there's no pain associated with it.
Me tomorrow.
And relax. That's good. Good job. Thank you. So she didn't actually have too much, movement within the knees. It's pretty good. Ankles were pretty good. Knees had a little bit of movement there. There was a little bit of a weight shift, if anyone caught that. So that's going to indicate a tightness on one, a little bit more tightness on one side versus the other. So there's a little more stretching on that side. So now that we covered knees and ankles, we're going to go over depth. So how are we going to get down to that 90 degrees with all the tightness? Is one, stretch first and then do your squat. Stretch out through the calf. And two would be to raise your heels. So I'll use this here. You're going to stand on two, basically up on your toes, and you're going to have your squat perfectly down without having to raise. And that's perfectly fine for a temporary fix, but know that you're going to want to stretch as much as you can.
So what's the word on stretching before working out? Because I've heard it loosens up your joints, increases risk of injury. Just do a quick warm-up jog or something.
I like to do an active dynamic warm-up. If your goal is to increase strength, you're not going to want to do a whole lot of static stretching before that lift. Because what happens when you stretch, you're actually working that muscle out. So it's just like when you do a lift, you're contracting the muscle fiber. When you're stretching, the muscle fibers are temporarily contracting and using that energy. So if you want to get strong, don't stretch a whole lot of that muscle group before that lift. But if you want to do a warm-up, like one of my favorite ones is a hamstring warm-up, is Frankenstein walks, hands out in front of you, you're going to kick up your leg to the opposite side, keeping the leg straight. What I'm doing here is taking the hamstrings to a full range of motion and also warming them up, stretching them out, and they tend not to lose as much strength from that. So if I can do that and go into squats and not see any ill effects.
Ah, cool.
Did that answer the question?
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions before we get any further? Any more questions? Okay. So, getting down to that squat. So either you're going to stretch or you're going to prop the heels up and just half inch max. So when you're looking at yourself, you got to make sure the knees aren't flaring out or going in. So there's back squats and front squats. Back squat is going to load the bar behind your neck, and from here, drop down in that squat. If you can't get to 90, stop. You stop wherever your range of motion is at, and go backward from there. Reason is, if you go past 90 and you're too tight, you're going to injure yourself versus improving yourself. So when you're squatting, make sure if you can only do a quarter squat, that's fine. So side to side, front to back. When we're squatting, we want to make sure that as you're going down, your chest is staying up as vertical as possible, and your chest is not going over your toes. Once you find yourself in a squat position where your back's bending, it's improper. So core back strength is going to be key on this, holding the bar up as you squat down. The minute we get here, you'll feel the difference of the shift in your weight. So you want to try and keep the weight over your heels as best as you can. The minute you come forward, you put a lot of pressure on the knees. You risk shredding the meniscus also as well as the ligaments in the knee. You're putting a lot of torque on them. So one way to prevent that is to actually go from a bar on your shoulders to the dumbbells by your side. Dumbbells on your sides is actually going to be a little bit more carrying your weight back and helping you put the weight over your heels. So, does anyone notice when they're squatting that their chest comes down too far, or you feel you're sitting back too far? Did anyone experience that? What do you experience the most?
I go back on my heels.
You go back on your heels. So when you wake up, your low back a little sore? Yeah. So what happens is if that weight you're carrying back here, you're struggling, you're straining way too much through here. So you could probably actually shift your weight forward a little bit more as you do your squat. So you want to come up and
Sure.
see your squat, and we'll see how we can change it up a little bit. So just do a regular back squat. Alright, so I don't know if anyone can see this, so go ahead and do a couple more here. Watch his low back right here. See how you're getting concave right there? As you squat, his back is really arched. Come forward a little bit more up here, just to kind of turn. There you go. Squat. That dip right there, that big arch in your back. So what you got there, you have an anterior pelvic tilt. Your pelvis is tilted forward a little bit. The biggest reason why is probably from hip flexor tightness. So hip flexors, they insert into the low back. They start originating at the low back, come down through your abdominal cavity, insert into the inner thigh. The main purpose of those muscle groups is for knee flexion, bringing the knee closer to the chest. So what are you all doing right now? You're all sitting. Guess what? That hip flexor muscle is in a contracted state. Over time, 10 hours a day, 8 hours a day. How many hours are you guys sitting? A lot. Everyone's on the computer. Those muscles over years are getting short and short and short and short. So now that pelvic tilt is getting more pronounced, and you're shortening these muscles in the lower back. So now what happens when you squat, that pelvis is tilting even more because now we're causing flexion of the hips. So every time you go to bring your knee closer, you're forcing that pelvis to twist more. So in order to alleviate that, hip flexor stretching. One of the best ways you can do it without just by yourself is a standard kneeling position with the knee down. You're going to squeeze your butt and then drive your hips forward. By squeezing your glutes, it deactivates the hip flexors and forces them to stretch longer through a greater range of motion. So squeeze here and push your hips down like a 45-degree angle and keeping your chest up. The minute your chest comes down, it becomes an ineffective stretch. So if you notice this one, you're going to need somebody to actually visualize, look at you, and notice that your hips are turning a little bit. So the hip flexion right here is going to cause low back to either be painful, or what's going to happen is your chest is just going to fall flat. You're going to get so tight that your chest will come here, and you're going to be in this position, or you're going to have that really bad arch. And then when you're squatting, most of the pain's going to go to your back and not your glutes and hamstrings. Anybody else experience that? That their low back is getting tight during squats? So could be an issue. Another good hip flexor stretch you have to do with a partner. You're going to lay flat on the table and have someone actually, so your butt would be on the very edge. You're laying back, knees to your chest, extend one leg down, and actually have someone forcefully push that leg down. That'll really open up the hip flexors, but not everyone has a table and a partner to stretch with, so the kneeling hip flexor stretch would be the best one for you.
And how long should you hold that stretch?
If you're tight, 45 seconds to a minute. You're going to hold that stretch long, and then just like when you work your muscles, you're going to go 2 to 3 sets. You know, the more sets you can do, the more stretching you do, the better. Especially if you have a really big tilt. You know, if you want, I can go around, kind of analyze everyone's pelvic tilt. But pretty much everyone here, if they're in the computer industry, is going to have anywhere between a slight pelvic tilt, depending on how young they are. The older we get, the more sitting we've done, so it's going to twist even more. So that's what I'm going to look for is anterior pelvic tilt, looking at the knees,